here we are. Another little rant video for you guys. So I just had a lesson with one of my students, and he's from the Philippines and has trouble with some vowel sounds. So I found, and we'll make this a long episode, I found that quite a lot of Asians, I think because of the way in which linguistics of Asian languages is sort of set out, how the sounds are in Asian languages, they don't often move the sides of their mouths to this kind of position, which happens a lot in European languages like English and French, the ones I know at least. You'll have a lot of vowel sounds that are oo, ah, etc. with the lips coming in, o, ow. So one thing to pay attention to if you guys are from languages where there are fewer vowels or you know that you keep the mouth wide, is to pay attention to those vowels like o, ow, and the lips moving in. If the sides aren't coming in, you're probably doing something wrong with pronouncing one or two vowels. Anyway, so we had a discussion about that, and he was asking me about understanding him, and I got into sort of a conversation with him about confidence in English and whether it's better to speak well with the kind of vocab that natives use, or whether it's better to focus on getting your pronunciation to be closer to that of natives. So we were having a bit of a discussion about those two things, and I said for him, once he nails a few of these sounds that he's having trouble with, like the TH and a few of these vowel sounds, and not pronouncing the R in words like bird or Peter, etc., if you want to be Australian, I said after he sort of gets those sounds down, he's still going to have an accent, but he's going to have reduced it quite a bit. And at that point, I would start focusing on learning, well, I'd probably start before then, but once we sort of do that, I would focus heavily on using the kind of language that natives use. So this is one of those things that it can be hard to do this passively. You can listen to natives and you can understand what they're saying quite often, but you're going to miss little bits and pieces. So quite often you need to go out there and actively study these kinds of things. You need to actively ask questions of native speakers, what they're saying, why they're saying it, when they're saying it. Even if you understand what they're saying, you get the gist of it. Because I get that with Kel, my wife, who's from Brazil quite a bit. I understand 90-95% of what she says when she speaks Portuguese. And as a result of that, it's kind of a two-edged blade where it's rare for me to not understand the context or the situation, and therefore words that I may not know, I can kind of let go by because I kind of understand what she's saying. But once you get to that point, which is a good level to be at in any language, you have to kind of keep tapping yourself on the wrist, right? Bit of thunder, we've got a storm coming through. You have to keep forcing yourself to ask, you just said a word I didn't know, you just used some grammar, what was that exactly? And it's kind of a painful process, but that's how you get to learn those kind of tidbits and the things that natives are doing that you may not pick up just from listening. You have to actively practice them. You might be asking, okay, what do you mean, Pete, when it comes to English? Two examples that I gave him were using phrasal verbs, and using phrasal verbs like to be up to something, to be up to something, meaning to be doing something, because you'll hear natives say that all the time. What are you up to? What are you up to tomorrow? I'm not up to much at the moment. Are you up to much? Let's go to the beach. I wanted to get up to something today. So they use that kind of language all the time. You might hear it and understand what it is, but try and make a concerted effort to use it yourself. The second example was, I'm after something. I'm after a coffee. I'm after Peter. Is Peter there? I've called up and I'm after Peter. I'm after a pay rise. I'm after a break. To be after something is another really good one that he'd never heard of, and it is to want something. I'm after something, right? The idea of following something. I am after it. It's first, I'm after it. To chase after something, to run after something. I'm after something. So that was a really good one. So we were working on these in the lesson and learning these kinds of just quite simply common verbs that natives use that aren't necessarily taught, or they're very, very advanced and they're not often in these kinds of grammar books or lessons that are sort of tackling basic English, right? So pay attention to what natives are saying. If you miss something, where possible, ask what it was, or clarify, or get some kind of information about what it was that you didn't understand or that went by, right? Because that's the only way you can learn that thing. Someone may utter a phrase to me in Japanese 100 times, but if I don't ask what they mean, I'm never going to learn what it is, right? But as soon as they've said, konnichiwa, that means hello, bam, I know what it is. And every time I hear it, I'll know what it is. So just don't lose that curiosity and that thirst for learning new things. Even if you've gotten to a really good level, which you will be at, if you can understand me right now, I'm not slowing things down, I'm not simplifying how I would normally talk, this is how I would talk. If you can understand me now, you've got a very good level in English, but don't get comfortable. Keep chasing that improvement, keep actively learning things, keep trying to absorb things, keep paying attention to detail, keep trying to learn things that natives are using. So we were talking about that, and I was saying the accent's part of it, but you don't need, if you've got a bar of, imagine 0 to 100. 100 is native level accent, and 0 is you can't pronounce any sound in the language, right? After a pretty short period of time, you get to, 70% on that scale, 80% on that scale, 90% on that scale, and it takes more and more effort to get higher and higher on that scale, and you get this sort of diminishing returns, right? It's probably not worth your time to invest 100 hours improving your accent by 2%, right? Where you could have spent 100 hours learning that kind of vocabulary or connected speech or different things apart from pronunciation that will make you sound more like a native speaker. That's the point I'm trying to make, okay? So to talk like natives, pronunciation is just one part of the entire equation, right? Another one there is using these kinds of tics, right? I tell you what, or something like that. Those kinds of filler words, filler phrases. I know that I'm sure it's the same in your native language at school. In my native language English, I was always told don't say don't say don't say don't say right, but that's how native speakers speak. You'll turn the TV on, you'll see politicians and they'll still say right, okay? So learning those kinds of phrases helps fill it out. Obviously don't go overboard, don't use them too much, right, right. But every now and then it adds a little bit more to the way that you speak and it'll make you sound more like a native speaker. One big thing, is getting that right in Australian English. Right, it's that kind of sound. So you'll see there that it's right at the back of the throat, right? The tongue's pulling down, the mouth's coming wide. One story for you is I remember working with a Spanish girl when I was working in the restaurant in Melbourne, Portello Rosso, which had an Italian name, Red Door, Portello Rosso, but a Spanish theme of the food. Go figure. So this Spanish girl spoke really well, but she had a bit of an accent, and the most not annoying, but jerking, kind of frustrating thing when talking with her that would sort of remind me that she was a foreigner would be when she said because Spanish speakers have a different kind of neutral vowel for when they say Instead of saying they have more of a nasal kind of sound like that, which sounds natural in Spanish, but when you use that in English, it sounds very peculiar. So that's why I think it's very important too to try and nail those kinds of filler words and sounds. Learning those kinds of sounds is really going to help you blend in with natives. The last little point that I wanted to talk about, which was the sort of focus for making this video, I've sort of come around and finally gotten to it, was he asked me at one point, do you understand when I speak? Do you understand when I speak English? And I said, well, I'm talking to you right now. I'm giving you a lesson. This is lesson number 5 or something. If I didn't understand you, you're paying me for nothing. I understood him. That was the basic point. But I was saying that quite often if you say something, and this is the problem that intermediate to advanced language learners have in their foreign language, especially when they're shy and they don't have a lot of confidence, if you say something to me and you don't give me a lot of context. So for instance, if you were to just say, and this was the example with him, kappa, right? So I'll explain what that is. A kappa is a cup of tea or coffee, right? A kappa, a cuppa, tea. Do you want to have a cuppa? I'm after a cuppa. What are you up to? Having a cuppa. And then he said, how do I pronounce cuppa compared to copper, which is a policeman, right? A cop, a copper. And this is where we got talking about the sides of the lips. Copper, kappa. Copper, kappa. And so I said to him, if you just say that one word, kappa, and you do mispronounce it, that's where I'm going to have trouble. I'm not going to know what you mean because I have no context, and I don't know if the way in which you pronounced it, assuming you pronounced it correctly, or you pronounce it wrong, but it sounds exactly like something else. So you said copper, but you meant kappa, or you said kappa, but you meant copper. If you don't give me more context, quite often I'll get confused, or I'll think you've said something else when you didn't say something. This is when I'm sure you guys have had this experience when native speakers, you'll see in their eyes, they kind of go, or they dip their head forward and they'll be like, what? You know, they're sort of like, sorry, what? What did you say? A big way to get around that, even if you don't have perfect pronunciation, which, you know, the average person learning any language doesn't have perfect pronunciation. Use more words, use more context, fill your sentences out, talk more, because ironically, by talking more, although you may make more mistakes, you're more likely to be understood because of the added context, right? Even if you are mispronouncing those words. So I said to him, if you just walked up to me and said kappa, but you'd mispronounced the word copper, so you were trying to say copper, but you said kappa, I would either think you were talking about this, or I would be like, I don't understand. What do you, kappa what? What? Like, I need more context. Whereas if I said to him, if you were to mispronounce the word though, and you said it in context, I called the kappas and they're coming now because of the car accident. I'd know instantly, even though you mispronounced it, you meant to say copper. Or if you said, I'm going to go get a copper. Are you guys after a copper? I'm thirsty, I might grab a copper tea. Even though you've mispronounced that, I would be like, he's talking about a coffee, he's talking about tea. So that was the basic point here. I said to him, don't reduce the amount you say because you're worried you won't be understood. In fact, do the opposite. Use more language, use more sentences, use more descriptions, use multiple ways of describing things. You know, it's really hot outside, it's boiling, it's sweltering. The more language you use, whatever language it is that you're learning, the more chances you're giving the listener to interpret what you're trying to say, even if you're mispronouncing words. So that was it for today. That was our sort of little lesson that we did over half an hour. We were talking about focusing on those things you know or can find out you're mispronouncing that you can fix, at least you can fix easily. They're not going to take a lot of time to fix. TH. Can you guys say the TH, right? And the vowels. Nail those. Or do it as best you can. After that, try and learn common phrases and the filler words, and and right, you know what I mean. Those kinds of phrases that are just knee-jerk reactions for natives, but make us sort of separate it out from foreign English language learners, right? Because they don't tend to use those words to the same degree. Learn those. And then beyond that, once you're learning that kind of vocab, to be after something, to be up to something, learn more phrasal verbs. Learn more phrasal verbs. Apart from that, use more language. Speak more. If you're worried you're not going to be understood, give the listener as much opportunity as possible to interpret from the information you've given that person, right? And I'm sure that there are many parallels, many analogies I could draw to that in real life. Usually, more information is better than not enough information when someone has to work something out. Okay, anyway, I've ranted. It's been about 15 minutes. I hope this video was helpful, guys. Let me know what you think below. And also, shameless plug, check out the podcast if you're not already listening to the podcast, the Aussie English podcast.com, and check out my classroom with over 50 courses, the Aussie English classroom.com. Go check it out. I want to see you guys in there. Anyway, peace out, and I'll chat to you soon.